Hello gainers, I'm Ralphie and welcome to my channel called Fitter Philosophy, in which I discuss practical, stoic, philosophical stuff in a sort of day-to-day context without the academic sort of aloofness. And this is all fueled, of course, by the passage of time. As you can clearly see, I'm weathering quite well, but I am no spring chicken, and I have learned a lot over life. And one of the biggest favours we can ever do ourselves is to sit down with old people, significantly older than ourselves, and just ask them about their ambitions in life, the mistakes they've made in life, the success they've had in life, what is important to them, what is not important to them, how things have changed over time, and how much they have changed their view of the world from when they were young to when they were old. And these are not difficult questions, they seem quite simple and straightforward. But often it's the simplest questions that provide the most interesting and insightful of answers. And one of the benefits of the internet is that you don't actually have to physically sit down with someone. You can listen to an old bunnity like myself who's just prepared to share certain views and perspectives which you may find illustrative, useful and informative. And I'm continuing my subject, a very brief mini-series on the subject of time, to explain what time is. Time is simply the dimension which separates events. Because if we didn't have time, literally everything in our existence, if we had an existence, would be compressed into microseconds, if not shorter, and we wouldn't even be aware of it. And it's the passage of time which allows for the progressive sequence of all the activities that we engage with and connect with as mortal beings on this planet in this moment and time. And that moment in time morphs on and on. And as I've mentioned in the past, the purpose of life is to experience it. And as part of that experience is to grow and to purify ourselves into simpler, humbler, more enlightened beings. And on the subject of time, it's about 12 years ago now, but I suddenly had to give up a full-time job where I was working between 45 and 50 hours a week, including commuting time. And I self-conditioned myself to accept this as normal, because for the majority of people who work for a living, it is normal. We give of our time for which we are paid for our time. And there are very few exceptions to this, unless you're someone who's got a lump sum of money and can invest in the stock market or invest in another business venture and remain passively involved, and then get the passive income from your commitment of supplying capital. But there's very few people in that position. The majority of us, we go to school literally from the moment we're in school. We're being groomed, educated, indoctrinated and conditioned to be useful producers, industrial producers. And there's no particular harm in that, because if we weren't doing that, would we be out in fields digging up potatoes, or would we be simply worrying about how bad the summer was going to be and how poor the harvest was going to be? Because many people were in that situation, and many people around the world are now still in that situation. Although in the so-called developed world, people have moved on from that. And it has its drawbacks, but that's for another subject. But time itself was, for most of the day, my time was pre-decided by the job I was doing. Now, don't get me wrong, gainers, I enjoyed my job. I was a funeral director. Now, you're saying, hey, how can you enjoy that? I'll tell you why, because The job genuinely mattered. It had very real purpose and value. And you could make a huge difference to someone's worst day of their life by making sure that everything went smoothly and the way it should be, and that all arrangements were specified and then articulated in the event. So that was my role, and it was very varied. I wasn't stuck in an office. I was out and about, and I was seeing the theatre of the human condition. So I've got no real regrets about that. And I do feel sorry for people who are in utterly thankless, boring, mundane jobs. And it's not necessarily poorly paid people. Some very well paid people can be in soulless, life-dumbing jobs, like, for example, in the financial industry. In banking, another good example. But it's only when I suddenly had to stop my job, and it was like walking down a flight of stairs and you think there's one more stair and there's not, and you kind of shudder to a halt. It felt a bit like that. All of a sudden, the subconscious routine was broken, and I was clearing out my house to sell it, to basically move elsewhere to look after my mother, who had dementia. And when I did the pen on paper calculations, it was absurd for me to be working while she was paying for a nursing home, because it didn't stack up. It just didn't. I basically, if she had passed away in a nursing home after how many years there, £1,000 a week. Yeah, you heard, £1,000 a week. And then the house had to be sold, her house had to be sold for less than its market value, because that's the games estate agents play. And of course, in between time, I've got to pay inheritance tax, which is assessed on the value of a property, not what it sells for. It's a con. It's a swindle. That's what it is. But people accept it because it's the norm. But I avoided all that. And one of the consequences was suddenly having extra time. And I can tell you in conclusion that whether I have been doing nothing or something, having that additional time has transformed my life for the better. And what I find is that I'm simplifying, divesting of physical stuff, motorbikes and bottles of whiskey and things. These are all going, and I'm investing in reading books, gaining knowledge, gaining benefit from speaking to other people, gaining their knowledge. And I have a number of incomes, including my savings, and that's what I manage on. And I don't need as much money as I used to, because as I get older, I just want less. As for fancy cars, restaurant meals, holidays, I don't care anymore. To me, they're not particularly valuable, because I've had more time to think about it, and I understand the value of time much more than I used to. And when you get older and time, there's less of it, you understand it even more. I'll come back to this subject shortly. Thanks for watching. Hope you've enjoyed this. Please subscribe if you haven't. Click like if you'd like to, and we'll see you soon, gainers. And in between time, before I see you again, you take care of yourself and enjoy the view.